וגם אני פתאום רואה את הקולות.
Hello and welcome to Kolot. This is your host, Rabbi Hillel Kappenstein, director of the Columbus Community Kollel, and it's a great honor and privilege to bring to you our next episode featuring Nissim Black. You've all seen him before, the music, the YouTube videos, or whatever it is. He's been out there, and it's really something fresh. A lot of his chadshus, as we would say, a lot of new stuff. And if you were in Columbus and met Nissim a couple years ago, this is a nice throwback. We had a great gig, and was co-sponsored by our friends at Chazak. And to have this, follow-up a couple years later is really exciting. We're going to talk about some things that you probably never thought that someone who's a Hasidic Jew went through, and the lessons they've learned and the people that they are inspiring because of. So this is going to be a fantastic episode. I'd like to thank our media sponsor, Columbus Jewish News, CJN. I just had the great privilege of meeting the CEO, Kevin Adelson, last night at the Jewish Columbus celebration. So special thanks to Jewish Columbus for that great program, and Columbus Jewish News for being our media sponsor. Future episodes will be quite entertaining. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a couple episodes on trauma. There's this incredible breakthrough therapy called SE, Somatic Experience. We're going to be having a follow-up to that on EMDR, like a sister therapy to that, dealing with trauma and how people really could turn their lives around. So that's going to be fascinating stuff. And then after that, we will have Behind Our Bima with Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, which is going to be awesome. Rabbi Ephraim has a great podcast that I enjoy listening to called Behind the Bima, and we want to have a little bit of fun together discussing about some of our favorite episodes that we've done and maybe some of them that got us into a little bit of trouble. So stay tuned for that. But without any further ado, allow me to tell you about our guest.
Yeah, here we go for the motherland. Yeah, we gon' play it loud until they feel it. Yeah.
Nissim Black has been a gangsta rapper, a gang member, and a faith seeker. But it is his current incarnation that is here to stay, an African-American Hasidic Jew who brings sharp beats and hook-filled rhymes to the masses. The first single of 2020, Motherland Bounce, is a confluence of everything he's ever done and everywhere he's ever been. The vibe is old school, but the song is thoroughly fresh, pairing big beats, an African hook, and a catchy chorus with a video that has already garnered millions of views on YouTube. Nissim, thanks so much for joining Kolot.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have an incredible story. I'm not sure if all of our listeners know. I'm sure some of them know, but if you could give us a little bit of a quick rundown. What's your background? I know you grew up in Seattle. Is that right?
Yep. I grew up in South Seattle. And it was very quite interesting upbringing. I was born to hip hop parents. Both my mother and my father were both hip hop artists, were rappers. They actually pioneered rap in Seattle. And my parents split maybe when I was around 2. My mother started redating and then eventually married my stepfather, who happened to have been in the same business as my father. They were both drug dealers. My mother was also a drug dealer. And I always say, like any good Jewish boy, I joined the family business very early. At 9 years old, I was already smoking pot, running with gangs at 12, expelled from the school district by 13, just finding myself in a whole world of trouble. Religion-wise, I was first introduced to Islam when I was a kid. My grandfather came to live with us, so that was the first introduction I had to religion. And already by the time I was 13, when I was like really rock bottom, I would say this event probably saved my life. I started going to missionary camp, after school camp with the Christian group, and they eventually invited me to camp, which I had a very, very powerful experience at. And then I ended up converted to Christianity. Thank God my grandfather was in prison already by this time, or else he probably wouldn't have went for that. But anyway, this held me really through my high school years. They allowed me to go back to regular school, to regular public school. And I did fairly decent. I played football very well, and did music on the side. And my music just sort of took over and became my passion. And, ended up, going through all those different motions of being a high schooler and trying to also maintain some type of faith. And maybe around my 10th and 11th grade year, I was very strong. Like I became a junior missionary and got very, very involved. So I knew the Bible very well. So I was very involved in it. So I would have asked questions, but usually they would be kind of silenced, not in a very like authoritative type of way. It was in evangelicals, it's not so much like it is in Orthodox Christianity, but nobody really had the answers. But I would brush it all under the rug. Later on, fast forwarding, I get a big offer from record label to make music, with their company. And uh, it was very interesting because at that time in the music industry, gangster rap wasn't so celebrated, just a few years prior. But by the time they were reaching out to me, 50 Cent was the biggest thing in hip hop at that time. And they obviously wanted a lot of replicas of the very hard sound.
Mm.
So I ended up, caving in, made music that probably was against who I was as an individual at that time, which is the struggle of being an artist. And after everything failed, my mother died of an overdose, and it was almost like the whole world came crashing. That deal pulled out. I had other companies that were interested in me. Everybody pulled out, and we decided to do it independent. And as I started to have success, from a very small grassroots level, there was another artist who wanted to get himself out, and he made a song about me, and a very not nice song. There's a lot of Lashon Hara in the song. And so we ended up getting into a fight, which led to a friend of mine trying to murder him. He ended up in prison, and they thought I sent somebody for them, and I was facing a life or death, or a kill or be killed situation that caused me to start soul searching for what I really wanted in life. So after I got off the phone, with talking with the other guys, they called me. We squashed everything, and I decided I wasn't going to go back. So I became even a stronger Christian, and the more and more I guess I would say, got deeper into Christianity and started to pick up my Bible and started reading more. Then I started to notice a lot of different Jewish things that were going on inside of the Bible, which led me to go deeper and deeper. Took all the religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, at least the three Abrahamic religions they call them, and I started going through the different texts, 8 hours a day, and then eventually led me to Judaism, where I found my home.
Wow. I mean, you covered a lot right there.
Yeah,
Um,
I tried to like cover ground, but
right. No, there's like so
it's a
many
two
things.
3 hour story.
Right. That is a 2 3 hour story. Over 2 3 decades. So wow. Okay, where do I start? You're as we speak, you're wearing a nice Hasidic garb. And I presume you take a lot of pride in this Hasidic approach. But you mentioned before how you joined the family business, as they say. So did I, by the way, working for not-for-profits, though. um, so you hit rock bottom. You started to turn things around. What are the things that you learned then that are with you still today?
I think one of the biggest things I learned was just, the power of influence. The power of influence in your environment and the things that you're around can really lead you down a very dark path. I mean, I think I even learned them more retrospectively. I do, I'm not just any Hasidic Jew, I'm a Breslover. So I spend a lot of time in his boat of this personal prayer, talking with God and self introspection. That's one of the biggest things in Breslov, if
Yeah.
not the cornerstone of Breslov Hasidus. And I noticed a lot, and I knew this back then. I was conscious of it, but we all run from things sometimes that we're conscious of when they make us feel uncomfortable. So one of the biggest things was that I felt very much so like I spent my whole life acting. I was always trying to um, be what everybody else wanted me to be, and I think we all fall into this. But it was on a deeper level. Like as long as I can, I have to do this because this is who everybody expects for me to be. I have to be in the streets. I have to be the weak. I have to be like, even though these things were like completely against my nature, and I knew it even as a kid. I knew these things growing up in my teenage years that I wanted something different, or I liked classical music, or there were rock songs that I liked, but you know what I'm saying, it wasn't hip hop, so I can't really, so it's very, very um so it's very interesting that this is the lesson that I've taken with me, and it sort of has helped me navigate. So that was one of the biggest things on the way to Judaism, was to get away from everybody
Mhm.
and go find who I am. Before I even knew I was heading on a Jewish journey, the moment that I said that I make it up in my mind that I'm gonna go find God and I'm gonna go find myself, I knew already, because how impressionable I was, that I needed to get away from everybody else.
Wow. Okay. One of the very common situations I find myself in is with conversion. People come to me, they say, "Yeah, can you help me? Can you sponsor me?" Like, what? You're asking a rabbi to give you money? No, no, no. Sponsor me, sponsor me, because I want you to represent me, and really, with full disclosure, we don't get involved with conversions. We turn them to synagogue rabbis because it is so complicated. It
Mhm.
is so sensitive, the entire thing, and it's really just not our place. If someone's going through the process and they want to learn, then we help them. But to be that lead figure in the conversion process, we stay far away from. Can you talk to us
Right.
a little bit about your conversion process, what that was like, maybe some of the struggles, and what you're really proud about, maybe something that made you stronger through the journey?
Well, the biggest thing for me was the um, that initial like fire, right? You you come into this, reading Tanakh from my standpoint. I'm like, and I would say most people did, because I wouldn't argue, but I think it's pretty unanimous that everybody agrees that the bulk of people that convert to Judaism come from the evangelical world. At some point, there's some type of Christian background,
Mm-hmm.
and through them, searching and digging up like I did, and each one in their own type of way, and for
Like
whatever reason,
Amari Stoudemire.
Mar Stedemeyer, whoever,
We've had him before, sure.
right. So a lot of people start digging, they start looking, and it's almost like a treasure leading them somewhere. So they come in with a lot of fire because you're reading the Tanakh, and every Jew becomes so precious in your eyes because you realize that they're so precious to Hashem. You're just reading through the narration, and you come in and you're super, super duper excited, and everybody cools you off. They've been doing this. It's one of those things that's like, saying
Uh-huh.
like, why are you, hey, relax, why are you so overly excited? And some things maybe so, but it was almost like your fire gets put out a little bit. And even more so when you go and talk to a rabbi and either they reject you or they push you away. My particular situation went that I was trying to constantly have this conversation with the rabbi. He knew what I wanted to talk about, and he kept pushing me off, pushing me off, pushing me off. And I guess I was somewhat aware of what it was. And finally, when he told me we can't have a discussion until you move into the community, so finally afterwards we all moved into the community, and still took a long time before we were able to meet with the rabbi. A relatively long time, and throughout the whole entire process, you have to get through a lot of different things. A lot of people don't know how serious you are. People have been in these communities for years and seen people come in and they're excited, or they get close to them, and then all of a sudden they fall off, or they leave, or they finish the whole entire process and then they leave. So it's almost sort of like, there's a, not only from the rabbi but from the community to some degree, there's a skepticism, and there's a sort of a period of waiting to really find out if you're sincere. And then after you get past the sincerity, like if you'll stick around. Don't want to build a relationship that's going to just go away. So that was sort of my experience. I would say our experience, me, my wife, and my brother and sister-in-law, who all went through it together. But at the same time, there was a major overwhelming amount of love that it came from the community that we were very not not accustomed to, right? So one of the biggest things that have always, I mean, I think catches me off guard, it catches a lot of other people off guard that comes from the exact same community as me. We have like a WhatsApp group of like 72 guys. Not everybody has a similar background, but the guys I know that come from like, I guess the hood, that type of thing, are not used to this type of chesed. So sort of like, what do you want from me? What do you like, do you work for the FBI? So that type of stuff, because the love is so overwhelming, and we're not used to getting that from even within our own community. So We have that part of the challenge, and then you have the next part of it where you're used to different type of love that you haven't experienced before also.
You just said something that I want to follow up on, that you come in with this overwhelming amount of love and they're not necessarily used to that.
Hmm.
I think there is this Yetzirah out there, this, pull, this like, let's see how we could, yeah, we're Jews. Yeah, we have Shabbos and we have mitzvos and we have Torah learning, Daf Yomi and whatever. But like, in certain ways, I want to be hip and I want to be like the Goyim, and I want to, whether it's dress or speech or music or whatever however I could, like, incorporate and be in both worlds. And you're coming in with this overwhelming love to try to get in. Now that you're in, looking back, do you miss anything? A, and B, what's your message to people who are in the Jewish camp and they can't get out by choice? It doesn't work that way. And how should they relate and embrace their Yiddishkeit?
So I would say the first thing is there anything I miss? Not so much. And it's not like
Burger King wasn't that good,
Burger King was not that great.
Okay.
McDonald's, I mean, I get way better quality food over here. You know what I'm saying? But I think the like some things I miss. I would say probably in Kolisha. Like
Okay.
some of my favorite records were by female artists. NDRE, Lauryn Hill, to name a couple. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But these are like things that are like I'm not stressing about. You know what I'm saying? Like those
Right.
are things that just like, if I am in a store, so I hear a song, bring back a good memory of those records that were very classic for me. So those type of things, but nothing big. The I feel so much like I'm a different person. You know, I said I was years ago, maybe 7 years ago. I seen a video of myself. At that time, the video was already, I would say, maybe 8 years prior to the time, like, watch, it's altogether 13 years ago now, right?
Hmm.
Or 15 years ago. My math's not that great. So anyway, I'm watching this video of myself inside of the studio with a bunch of my friends. I had a cut off shirt, and my tattoos are showing. I'm walking back and forth, and we are just talking nonsense. And I don't know if I said any word that's not a swear word, right, in this whole entire video. And I'm looking at myself, and I was so like thrown off, like I didn't recognize myself. Like I don't, I remember I remember that day, but I don't remember me. I don't remember how I thought. I literally, mamish, felt like I was looking at a different person. I haven't sworn or said a swear word, and Shim should help me, continue, since 2008. I haven't uttered a single swear word. So I'm looking at myself and this thing going like, wow, this is like, who is this guy, right? So it's the weirdest thing in the world, because it's almost like I felt like a completely different person. So, and I think that, me conveying that to you, um, gives you an idea of how much I feel like I'm so different. My aspirations are different, and that world, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable in that type of environment. It just has nothing to do with me today. So I think that, that's that. And I would say to, maybe a lot of people who want that world, it's very hard for me. Even my wife, I would say my wife, it's like for her, it's the biggest thing for her. She's like way more, I would say cut off a little bit more from the last. And she was always sort of a yachid and stuff anyway, all the
Yeah.
time. So, but she says it to me often. She's like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, what are people like? What are they chasing over there? Like, what's over
Hmm.
there? And I understand what they're searching for, but it comes from a lot of self introspection. That if people would just sit and then really sit with themselves, every time we get in a car, we do something, we gotta have music. I hear people all say, and I'm a musician. This is probably not great PR, but like sometimes just cut off the music, like stop the music, stop all the everything else, and to listen to yourself, see who you are, know what your aspirations is, because
Uh-huh.
usually that trying to find and look for things in the outside world, called the outside world, secular world, whatever, racial world, is a cry for something that's deep inside that you're craving.
Hmm.
And like they have these conditions where people like start eating rocks, and different. They're searching for iron. They don't know the iron, but the body says that they need iron or they're deficient in a certain mineral, so they start doing or eating weird things. But and they don't know that there's iron in it, but they just the body starts doing things. So these are sometimes symptoms of something that is much deeper of what's going on inside the individual. There's a chisaron, there's a lacking
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
something that they're trying to go find in the outside world that for sure won't fulfill it because Hashem gave everything by us. Everything's by us already. So I think that that's the biggest thing is that when you find it and you look and you dig on yourself and you see that that's the reason why you're searching for fulfillment. And one of the things is like this. I'll give you an example. Everybody asks me all the time, what's the whole my love Goisha music? It's an MS. I'll be very, very clear, very honest. I love listening to Jewish music, and I love really I like Yiddish speaking music. My Yiddish is not so great. There's a certain cry by, but I I think that because the non-Jewish world offers a level of emes that we don't get inside of our own songs, that people are looking and they go searching for this emes, even if it's an emes that doesn't relate to me. I'm just looking to hear that truth. I want to hear, NF rant about his mental health disorder or whatever's going on in his mind, or Eminem say that, he wants to harm his mother. Like, okay, I don't want to hurt my mother, but hearing that truth come out of him instead of like pasukim, I don't know if the person's really related. That I want to hear what's
Uh-huh.
going on because I got problems, and I want to hear that other people also relating to me and going through the same exact struggles that I am. And it's a craving for endless that even though it may come from a different source, that's not necessarily, a team for the individual, but it's like it's a craving. So I think that
Hmm.
that's a symptom, for something that's deeper that could come from something kadosh, but it finds itself in something mundane.
Hmm. Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, there's a certain like authenticity, being true to who they are, not trying to fake it.
Hmm.
Um, in the context of their lyrics, what they do in their private life or other parts of the studio, that's not what we're discussing, and that's what might
Of
be the
course not.
drive. Right, right. That's
Of course not.
the drive is saying that they could talk about their real life, and in Jewish music, where people want to find like the latest um, you know, Pasuk in Tehillim that like makes sense for a song but hasn't been used yet. There.
Right, right.
So and do you even really know what the pirushim, the commentaries are on that? So that's what you're saying. So what's the eitzah? What would you say what's your advice? Because that I could understand that struggle now that you articulated it so well.
Right. I think the biggest thing is I think the solution is trying to find, I was just talking to Jacqueline about this, about trying to find authenticity within Yiddishkeit and the things that we go through. And I think it's deeper than um it's deeper than, probably beyond the scope of this conversation, but I think more more of the truth being created and coming out. Like everybody has problems. Like when people, as kids are in a certain way. I just spent this last Shabbos at Waterbury in Connecticut,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
talking about I this Shabbos was like, wow. I'm talking about like crazy, beautiful Shabbos
By the yeshiva
at the
there.
Yeshiva Waterbury. Yeah.
Wow, my
This is
cousin just
there.
went there. Nice.
Really? I'm talking about the most amazing Shabbos. These boys have been beyond impressive. The Midos, Rabbi Kalish, like it's
Yeah.
an environment, and there are those who have kids that are struggling and they want to hide the fact that they may need it or they want to pretend that things are going on and where they can't end up in a place like that where I'm talking about like I'm beyond impressed. There's no words to say what I experienced this past Shabbos over there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we hide a lot, and I feel like it comes from the leadership down that the rabbis,
Hmm.
they have to just start being real. Let's start talking
Hmm.
about things
Starts
for
from the
real.
top.
We don't have to
Right.
get crazy, but it starts from the top where people could start, because one of the biggest things is when you're going through things and you have a tough time and you feel isolated like nobody else is going through it, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of those deep struggles that people are going through, they start looking for a different outlet because it's got to come out. I need
Sure.
somebody
Sure.
that's gonna describe and help me work through what I'm feeling, And so I think that it starts with that type of authenticity and the shidduchim, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
let's just be real. Just like everybody fake it till you make it, you know what I
Right.
mean? What I'm saying? Like, I've seen it so much. The school system, look at how many people are, lying on the applications to get inside a particular school. And
Right.
and then by the time you get there, nobody's my team for what's on the actual
Mhm.
paper that you signed to get in.
Mhm.
And then so it's like, oh wow, So I think that it's a lot of these type of things where I'm not particularly taking jabs, Pastor Shalom, at any particular individual, but I'm just saying that sometimes we got to do a shift and get ourselves back on track to this emes, because the chasam Hashem, the seal of Hashem is emes, and we're the people of Hashem. So we for sure can find any shekel within ourselves. In order, we have to be all going. We have to bring a light into the world. We should be a mashpia to the world. They should be being mashpia to us. And we have to go find their books and their music and their this and their that. We have everything by us. So I think that it starts with the leadership down. Rabbis being
Mhm.
real, and that right now, the whole world's chasing after this right now.
Right.
Everybody wants somebody to just speak the truth, to be emes, like, you know what I mean. And when you see things, that was a my love Rav Kook, that he would see things in the world and say like that. Wherever you see smoke, there's a fire over there somewhere. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if you see that something's going on in this world, then that means that Hashem is illuminating something like that. You know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Mhm.
So, and if we see it out there, then it's very much so that Hashem is trying to get us to awaken to something that's going on.
Okay, so you talk about the rabbis need to be real. So okay, thank you for the musser. Appreciate that. But but you also mentioned something about people trying to fake it till they make it, get into school, whether it's matim for them or not. So that's actually a great segue to my next topic, because you made some headlines, probably you weren't so happy about, but about getting into school, and that really brings us to the next topic of racism and Judaism. A couple months ago, we had on our Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. She chairs the Congressional Black Caucus, and she talks about some of her childhood struggles with as it pertains to race. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about your challenges? Is it blown out of proportion, this whole thing, racism, systemic racism? Is it blown out of proportion? Is it real? Is it somewhere in between? And how was your journey in that world? What was it like? Because really, in all honesty, because until now we haven't been being honest, no. But what I mean by in all honesty, if we were to be real, as we were talking about before, Judaism, Yiddishkeit's about bechira chavshis, that our free will, and that really determines our status, really.
Right.
Doesn't always come out in the in this world. In the next world, we'll definitely get what we deserve, but in this world is sometimes is a little sheker. What is your take on this relationship of racism as a Jew in society, prior to your conversion? Now that you are, where are you living again, in Eretz Yisrael, right?
Living in Eretz Yisrael.
Right. So talk to us a little bit about your relationship as it pertains to race.
So for me, these are two different categories, like the racism and different things like that I may have experienced inside the community and outside of two different things. That was an uncomfortable article for me for many different reasons. And this probably what would help put into perspective what I was talking about, about the authenticity, about being real and knowing where to align the red tape, sort of. And then there's always, okay, that's what I should wanted. So in that particular situation that I was going through, trying to get my kids to the school and facing the racism and different things that we were facing, was never for me a public story that I wanted to get out. The few people
Mm-hmm.
that were helping us out with things and it was real. If anybody talked to me, I will, but I would have never went to the media and wanted this in the public,
Mm-hmm.
because the
Mm-hmm.
last thing that we need is for people
Right.
to be like, oh wow, Jews are racist. That was one of the biggest things. So that's why it hurt me even more. And I remember calling, really Rabbi Weinberger in Ish
Uh-huh.
Kodesh,
H. Kodesh.
and really seeking out some advice, some answer on how to deal with the situation, which I felt like I had really good advice. But So it was very tough for me. It was tough for my wife during that time. Not only what we were actually going through, but it was even furthermore that the story had went out was
Mm-hmm.
a big
Mm-hmm.
problem for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember going to a very very big Rav, and he was like, Hashem did this. You didn't do this. Hashem did
Uh-huh.
this. Even if you didn't want to, Hashem made sure that people know. And it's the Musa for people, and more people reached out to me, and I ended up hearing other horror stories, and I ended up seeing a lot more people that wanted to get involved and wanted to help. So it turned out to be a beautiful situation. Now, I do believe that there is a such thing as racism, systemic racism, and all these different things going on. I would say in the world, but specifically in America, and I could deal some a little bit with Israel. The problem is that I don't believe that it's the main problem. I believe it's been completely blown out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there's a degree. That's my personal belief. I have to say this and quote this with growing up in Seattle, which is a very very flowery, very politically correct place to grow up in. To a certain degree, it's like you be politically correct, because if you're not politically correct, then we'll stone you. So I
Yeah.
don't know how that really works. So very passive aggressive. But that I grew up in Seattle, so I don't really feel like I experienced it systemically. Absolutely, there was, I've talked about this before. We didn't have textbooks at my school, but we had brand new uniforms and brand
Mm-hmm.
new basketball uniforms, football, brand new stadium, state of art. Like, how do you have all that and not have books? Like, who's allocating the budget over here, right?
Right.
Where you go to other schools, and Bellevue and Issaquah were predominantly white schools, and they had everything, and so I don't. There's definitely a systemic issue. I was here the other day. I'm in New York now, and I was on my way. I went through Jersey to go drop off I think I was dropping off my family. They were here with me for a few weeks while I was here on tour. And I went to go drop off my family, and I was rerouted off of the freeway for whatever. Maybe it was a crazy amount of traffic, but it worked out because I need to get gas. I was trying to get my rental car. So I go into the gas station, and I'm like in a black neighborhood. And I walk in there, I'm thinking maybe I'll go get some sunflower seeds to help me stay up on the roads. And so I'm looking, I can't find like sunflower seeds. I can't find anything. Like everything that was name brand, Lay's, David sunflower seeds, granola, like your nature, anything like that was behind bulletproof glass. Everything that was on the shelves were like some crazy non-brand something that they probably picked up off Chinatown or something. Like, I don't know. It was just like some crazy, and I was just looking like, and the place was like, okay, it's not so clean, whatever. Some gas is not clean, but it was just like so ran down, nothing there, and like all the the like normal things you would expect to go in to get in a gas station. Not only are they like in a bite size, but they're all behind glass. And I was just like, man, this is like messed up, because I just got off when I was by the Palisades, I'm over here. I could go off and get coffee and
Right.
the cappuccino, americano, whatever. Like I got everything. I get my pedicure, whatever. So I'm like looking at the contrast of these different things, and I'm just like, who's responsible for this? Like, how does this happen? Like, why are there not these type of resources? I've seen this over and over again. So, being that said, a person coming from who grew up in New York, Brooklyn, Jersey, whatever, they're gonna have a different perspective than me because I came from Seattle. So that's another thing. Like, not only is it blown out of proportion, but it's like there's this blanket thing. Not every black girl wants to tell their story. Not every black girl comes from has a crazy story like Nissim Black, right? So
Yeah.
my story shouldn't blanket all of their story, right?
Right.
In the same way as that, like, I don't want to be told that, oh, you've been facing racism all this your whole entire life if I don't feel like it. So why should I say that? Which I don't think of predominantly, all African Americans do. But I think if you go to some pockets in the United States, that people very much so feel discriminated against. So I don't think this overwhelming. And then from that, there's been a push to make you in your mind think this, and I grew up thinking like, yeah, people racist on this stuff. And when I started thinking, I was like, hold on, I can't really, I don't know, I really don't know when
Yeah.
people were being racist. Like, you know what I'm saying? I would have to like really try to dig and try to find something, and it wasn't making part of my life.
So you said that there is some
So
systemic.
I
You said there's some systemic racisms, and I want to zero in on that because that could mean different things to different people, in my opinion. And I'll tell you, this past Sunday, I was at a wedding in New York City. The Schottensteins' youngest son, Jeffrey, got married, and LeBron James was in attendance. And somehow, in the middle of the wedding, he became like the life of the party. I mean, he got in the circle. I mean, I left by then, but I got videos that were sent to me. And he became like the literally the spotlight. I mean, obviously with the family that was making the simcha. And
Mhm.
he's an African American basketball player making 40 million a year or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some people have the pushback, like, what do you mean systemic racism? Look how successful people like LeBron could be. We have an African American vice president, and we also have an African American past president of the United States. Um, I mean, there could be racism, but how is it systemic if they could be the top of society here in America?
So that's what I mean by it's not a blanket statement. You can't say that
Mhm.
systemic racism or racism itself is a is for everybody, right? Because there are certain neighborhoods and certain places where people feel that they're much. You drive through Brooklyn and you see the poverty and how impoverished people are and different things like that. And the things that are mostly systemic are not the things that people think. For instance, welfare, that's systemic racism. That was instituted at the time. You're looking at the poverty level in New York for African Americans was less than 4%. What a reason we need government handouts, and it's
Uh-huh.
made in a way that it's put there in a way where if a woman has no father in the house, she gets more resources and more funding. If the father is not in the house, if the father's in the house, then she barely gets anything. I've seen it. I've been on the welfare and the welfare system, and with my wife when we were very young, we got nothing together. Her sisters had more money because for every single father and everything else and whatever,
Uh-huh.
more food stamps, more money from the government, Section 8, everything else like that. We were
Uh-huh.
really struggling and trying to make it, and we could get nothing, right? So the government, in a way, has set itself up that way. Planned
Uh-huh.
Parenthood, where's that at? Predominantly in African American. See, this is the different systemic racism that people will never talk about. But Planned Parenthood, predominantly in African American and minority neighborhoods.
Right.
Same things with the gun, with gun shops and liquor stores and different things like that. These are the things that cause people not to, and these would be the things that people would not even think about. With this is systemic. So a lot of the problems, the people who are screaming racism the most right now in our society, is saying everything is racist, are the racist ones. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. And all the systems have been in place. Look at the criminal justice system that obviously needed some type of reform to it. I believe the previous person in office, whatever he did by releasing a lot of these non-violent, criminals, like come on, dude. Like for
Yeah.
long, there's people been sitting in there for years for marijuana misdemeanors, and now all of a sudden it's legal. So these type of things are systemic. The criminal justice system, like I've said, the school system, all these different things like that. Like you or in a black school, you have less resources. It just is
Mhm.
what it is. You have less resources. I mean, were you gonna blame on the community? Community has, what? And you mentioned Kamala Harris. I think she's like half like Indian or whatever. But like even her, she's known. She was a very tough prosecutor, and she put a lot of black men in prison. Like that was her thing. She was all for that. You look at President Obama. I don't necessarily consider him a person that was black. I would never take anything away from his presidency. I mean, he's black. What is black? At this point, his father was African from Kenya.
Right.
His mother was white, Caucasian. He's not descendant of slaves in America that we would
Correct.
consider black or African. So like he went to Harvard, and because and all the way he hung on his white mother. All of a sudden she became irrelevant afterwards because it wasn't politically correct to say that anything about his white mother. It's always about
Right.
his black side. So
And
you seeing um, the same exact thing. It's almost like from the Jim Crow era of
Mhm.
when racism was like right there in front of your face, the laws, everything were instituted. That's not around, but they just sort of switched the way and the way that they're doing the racism, and somehow black people as a whole are still not allowed to climb out of these crabs in the pot, and that conditions you. So you'll have a Oprah, you'll have a Jay-Z, you'll have a Kanye West and different things like that, and people would give back what they can, but it's not a mentality. I just mentioned to you the amount of chesed that I received from
Right.
people that didn't even know anything about me. It's not the mahus of our communities and where we come from. So in order to like really make a difference, they don't have yeshivas and all that to sponsor, right? So they'll give here to this school and everything like, but when it really matters, nobody's dollars, which is like keeping black fathers in the house, combating, these laws and different things that are these welfare programs and different things like that that have made it uncool to be a father or gives you less. I think people are just fighting the wrong things. So if black lives actually matter, then what's really damaging black lives? There's a whole lot of different things. We should have fought poverty, should have fought, that there was no fathers in the home. There's a whole lot of other things. So it's not like these things don't exist, but I think that they're flipped around in our head, that we think like police brutality is the main issue. We believe like, that there's not enough black students in Harvard or Princeton, like all these different things like that. It's like, it doesn't matter to me that these things, like, let's deal with the nitty and the gritty. If I don't have an IQ where I can, excel well in a prestigious school, then why don't I just go do my thing? It's not like these guys end up being the most successful people anyway. So it's like, what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Gotcha. I
it's
gotcha.
it's just. So those are my opinions about it.
Yeah, and I think there's two conversations. There's the individual conversation that in this country, yes, you might have challenges and it's not a perfect system, but there's still a road to success with hard work,
Hmm.
perseverance, and siyata d'shmaya, help from above. And you've done it, and many others like you have
Right.
done it. And then there's another conversation about how we structure the system, whether that's legislation or the system or things like that. How can we set more people up for more success? And I think we can't combine those conversations and, like you said, really make it a blanket issue. I think it's more
Right.
nuanced, and we don't do ourselves or your communities, the African American communities, a favor when we when we just use one size fits all approach. In our remaining 10 minutes or so, I want to ask you about your style of music. And I know you've talked about this a lot before, that, rap might not be out there as such a Yiddish brand, but it's in the heart. And you've talked about your rebellion that have said that it's what's your kavana, what's your intent, where is it stemming from? It's not so much about the genre, it's more about your lyrics and your message, and then that's a beautiful thought. It's about the panemius, not the chitzonius, the inner self, not the outer self. I totally get that. Here's where I think some people might I don't want to say push back, but so how do you deal with the following? Because growing up as a kid, there was someone different than you, but had some similarities. I don't want to make it that they were exactly the same, but some similarities, and they went through a similar journey. You might know who I'm referring to. I don't know if you like the
Hmm.
song Chop 'em Down," right? So,
Uh-huh.
how do you differentiate yourself from that? Because I don't know how well things turned out over there, and that's where people could say it's not just about the lyrics, it's about the association, it's about the genre. Where does it all stem from? It's not, you can't just zero in on one part about what the words are, but the whole flavor and branding of it might also make a difference. What's your response to that point?
So my response is that there's a few different responses, but I think the first thing is that first off, when we look at Nagina in itself, music, I think it's first from Mauritius that Yuval and Tubal-Cain, I think, did the first weapon of war, but Yuval made the first, Kayla Naginas, the musical instruments came from him. He was a Rasha. He was a Mamish Rasha. Music in itself and instruments were invented for Avodah Zarah. Same thing by, like we're talking about, literally, he created, I think, the lyre, the harp, and I can't remember whatever else. Exact instrument that David HaMelech is known for, is this is what he created, instituted for the whole entire Avodah, the whole Indian was Avodah Zarah. So I think that when we look at music from its inception already, and where it came from, this is one of the reasons. I can't remember the exact reason. The brushing up on my surahs and the hadiths, because
Yeah.
I don't remember so much from Islam. And Islam music is haram. They say it's haram. They don't. They think music in itself is already altogether evil. Comes from it, and they have an understanding it comes from an evil source. But for us, really, our whole thing is to be. You can't. Many of our songs comes from Mamish Taklikas, come from our enemies themselves, Russian groups and soldiers and Polish soldiers. A lot of the liturgy that we're singing on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, a lot of these things come from our Mamish enemies, people who consider Amalek Mamish. So we already have this. So it's like almost when you get to today, which a lot of people don't even know the origins of hip hop, and I talked about this, regardless if it was something that was close or non-cultural, different things like that. It's like hip hop didn't start out as gangster and disrespecting women and different things like that. That's not how it started. It's talked about people going through their own struggles and speaking about their own reality. Rapper's Delight was the first song, was about just fun and hanging out. Yeah, Grandmaster Flash and Fierce Five, and like you had like it's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I think from going, how I keep them going under. Like this is what people were talking about. Later on it turned into this gangster stuff and all this other stuff, which has dominated the culture of hip hop, right? But I look at it like this. First off, when it comes to the comparison, me and that other individual are at different stages in our life, and I think that one of the tough parts about it, and I would say something to defend my stance, but I will also say something in his defense. The first thing I'm going to say, at least about myself, is that, I come into this, I never picked this up at some point. This is a part of my youth, right?
Sure.
My mother was a rapper. My father was a rapper. This is like who I've been, my whole entire life. As long as I could go back, they used to have videos of this, me doing Michael Jackson with poop in my diaper, you know what I'm saying? And I used to sleep with a dirty guy. Like I was a music guy, rapping, dancing since I was a kid. So this is a part of my essence of who I am as an individual, no matter what stage I've been in my life. So to say that that's going to be the downfall, I think that'd be, and to say I feared it also myself because I understood the power of environment. But the even bigger than that, I would say, is that I came in a little bit more established. I was married already, had a wife already for I don't know how long. I have, Rebbeim and Sadiq. I was close to long before I even picked up rap. I stopped rap for a period of time and got away from it just to ground myself, which I thought I was done altogether. And eventually I came back. It's a different story. But I'm much more mission driven and understanding that this was my shlichut. You know what I'm saying? From the moment that Hashem brought me into the world, I know this for many different reasons. The other thing, as I would say, is that what makes it tough, and being in the position that I am now, is with the constant. In general, people are critical, right? It's just the way that the world is and different things like that. I think like once it comes to us as Yidden, it's like multiplies by 10, right? So a guy like that lad, the individual was disgusting, and I think everybody knows. I don't think it's like so much of a story or a matter of lashon hara because the person's been very open about it himself. But I think that the constant criticism from people telling you you're not Jewish enough, you're doing this or you're that, is a wear and tear on the person of the constant being beat up and being criticized and being, that for me was probably the thing that, in my opinion, I didn't talk to him about it since he's had a change of heart on things, but I think that people don't realize how much that is the thing that can really break a person down. Sure. And we're seeing a lot in our own communities of kids feeling like they're not enough and different things like that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that individual have to go through. The other thing is that, there's a or which is like one of those form that is so breastfed that it's like it'll never be translated into English. So where Abraham ben Nachman, Abraham Chazan says over there, he was talking about the air balloon. And this is over 100 years ago, before there was planes. And he said that he was saying that in the future, you'll see that every person will be able to travel to his or her destination by the air. And he says, and just like with this, every new invention that will be created, says the whole purpose why Hashem allowed for it to come into being was for the sake of Kedusha, in order to glorify Hashem's name. He says, but the klal is that the klipa gets it first. The klipa gets it first. So just because we see something, we have Hanukkah. Why do Jews have a a holiday on the 25th day of the winter solstice, like all every other avodah zarah. All right. So, I mean, there's obviously, I think it was Lamar and Rosh Hashanah is originally, it was Jewish and whatever, we have our orders, but I'm saying, but we're looking at something that, mamish, that the Goyim have, and we have the same thing. Or by us, we have the same thing. Or we take elements of this world and we elevate it to Kedusha. And I think that's like, that's really, like my purpose. It's what I'm doing. And I don't think that there's anything even remotely wrong. You talk about Jewish music, and like I said, I think it's always on the sincerity, not just the sincerity. I think it's the individual. If like Ram Nachman says himself, that if the person is not clean, the music is not going to be clean.
Uh-huh.
So no matter what the person is talking about, and it's it may be hard for some people, but that's the way that I feel about it. And I think that we get mixed up sometimes with genre, our preference, and then like if we don't have a preference with something, like then we like we automatically usher it, like what
Yeah.
I'm saying, like what I mean, like and some people can't make that distinction
Right.
within themselves,
Right.
and it's
Right.
very difficult.
Yeah, and there is like the old, Chadash Asr Min HaTorah slogan, and I could understand the hesitancy, but you're trying to be a little more nuanced, and I like your differentiation. I like the point that you make that if you tell someone that they're Gaish enough times, it could really wear them out. And I think two things could be true at once. I could really understand where a lot of that criticism came from because that's not necessarily our derech, that's not necessarily our Masorah. So I could hear that very, very loud and clear. I think my takeaway is, and I'm going to kind of put a spin on this. If that's true, that it could really wear someone out. The flip side is if we tell our fellow students, talmidim, children, community members how great they could be, how much of an amazing yid they could become, and what a tzaddik they could be, and how much Torah they could learn. Not that it has to be done all now. You keep pounding that in, it's going to be the exact opposite of wearing them out. You keep telling them. Go ahead.
I would go even further. I was going to go further on that point also and say like that it's very, very true that some things seem and feel very foreign, but like obviously doing this, it was a time where the previous generation had a big problem with what MBD was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to Lubavitchers who grew up in Chabad Hasidus their whole entire life, and he said when we were kids, Avram Fried was usher for us, mamish usher,
And
not
today,
allowed. I was gonna say the goyish, and now like this is the epitome of what Jewish music is. You know what I'm saying? People have problems with Carlbach. I mean, like, so this is not really, and I know that this seems very, very far out, but like things change. People had a problem with the Baal Shem Tov. Like that was a whole different Derek, and like this isn't the Masorah. You know what I'm saying? So
sure.
Hashem does these things where I think he constantly challenges us, and he brings chidushim sort of to keep us on our toes and keep us on our feet. Am I saying like rap's like the new Jewish genre? I don't know. I met a lot of these kids over there, but I'm not thinking about that. Hashem gave me a gift, and I'm going to bring people, and I'm so like 1,000% positive on what I'm doing is what is everything I believe that Hashem wants me to do. These things don't shake me, but they as people going on, how many people I've met that they've touched me because of the music, and then they've met me and said, wow, you know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, I'm a person who wants to serve Hashem, and that's going to come out. Whether you were listening for that or not, that's on you. But whether or not you experience that, that's on the individual.
Right,
but
right.
but I think that a lot of times is like we're so quick to touch things up that we don't even give it a chance to really have itself to grow, and then eventually then we get pulled in a harder way.
Right. No, for sure. And would you say that your rebbeim, your mentors, spiritual, people that you talk to have helped you have a perspective on that and keep things in check? Because really, we're sometimes so like a piece of our own puzzle, we don't have a lot of clarity. Have they played a big role in your life?
Absolutely. My Rabbi Brody, Shmuel Brody, it was originally Seattle, is in Baltimore now, but he was like the biggest thing for me, just because he was just ever Shem, like watching a person like that. I just some people were like, yeah, so and so's he's a Rav, he's a Gaon or whatever. Like those words I wouldn't use to describe him, because his love for Hashem and it just was mamish, something that was so impactful for me. So being able to talk to him about these issues early on, when I was deciding to come back to music was very, very influential. And I remember at one point I was not gonna do rap. I was like working on like doing some nigga. I have a nice voice. And my brother-in-law and he was straight with me. It's like I'm sure he would prefer that in terms of his own musical preference. But he was like, I'm just not sure that's what Hashem put you in the world to do, though. You
Mm-hmm.
know, not
Mm-hmm.
sure if that's the authentic you. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if we need
Right.
like a Black Carbach. He didn't really say it like that, but that was something that was influential to me. You know, Rav Arush was like so huge on me going out and spreading light to the world. You know what I mean? And that's his biggest thing. You know, Rabbi Chimayo, who I've become close to, really has been very like
Sure.
very very. He wants it for. To Makarov the other people, he's not so for it being inside of by the Bachum, the young Hasidic Bachum or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But I tell them, I said, Rebbe, I don't know. They keep taking to it. I definitely not going into. She was like, hey guys, just check this out. But people are taking to it.
Right.
So what can you
Right.
say? People are not in places that we think that they're in. You know.
Sure.
Um, Rav Busto, I happen to be very close to. He's the
Oh, the
grandson of
great
Baba
football.
Sali. Like,
Sure.
talk to him, Rav Nassim Lyman. Like, I talked to a lot of different tzaddikim, and I think the biggest thing is like, these things they come out, and 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 I was very confident and very sure that this is what Hashem was given me to do. It's come out. If I could come to the amount of letters and mail from people that have come. But I was just saying the amount of people that I know for sure I've been able to help through my music and through my story and just my existing as an individual.
Wow. So your Rebbeim definitely had a big role in your, in your journey. Nissim, this was awesome. I mean, we covered a lot. Your lessons from when you were a young boy, the perseverance through your Gayris process, your take on racism not being blanket systemic or not systemic. It's a little more nuanced. Your style of music, what differentiates you from the past, and your Rebbeim. We didn't get into some of the singles and the music videos, the specifics that you've done, but we're out of time.
I got okay.
Okay,
Let's
fine.
say I
You
got
know
a
what?
few more
You
minutes.
got one. All right, so I'll tell you one that really that really got me going.
Uh-huh.
And that was the Hold On video you did, and it was dedicated in memory of Mendy Klein, just a little north of Columbus from Cleveland, Zechariah Livracha. And whew, wow, that's a hard video to watch. I got to be honest with you.
Right.
It's a hard video to watch, but I think it's because it's such a hard topic. It's not because of the video. It's the video is just reflecting the sugya, as we would say.
Right. Right.
How did and you have? I'm not trying to pick that one because it's like your number one. There's a lot. You have a lot of great video. I know the one with God Elbaz is really what took things to the next level. But I'm picking this one because we've done a few episodes on mental health. We've done a few episodes with Tzvi Gluck. We did an episode with Tzvi Gluck from Amudim, and we've talked a lot with Dr. David Lieberman, Rav Aaron Lapiansky, specifically after the whole tragedy with an Israeli author.
Right.
And it's an important topic that has to be obviously discussed and age appropriate and everything like that, but it can't be thrown under the bus. Talk to us a little bit about how that video came about. Was it hard for you? I mean, it's pretty graphic in a sense of like it's real. Like you feel the pain almost. It's like boom, boom, boom every single time, every second, every passing moment, every new footage, and then you have, I think it was Avi Kraus. Yeah, Avi Kraus, and you just see him going, hold on, and like, whew, it's hard. Talk to us about from your side of the aisle.
Thank you. That video was very hard for me afterwards. And I like while you're shooting it, all the pieces are happening at different times and whatever. So that, but after watching, it was like, and this was a much I don't know, PG cut of the original with the first one, so definitely we had to like tone it down, you know what I mean? But you want people to feel the impact of what's going on because so many people's stories not being told, and so many people are wrapped up in the bondage, of what these type of experiences do to them, and even sometimes, I mean, we didn't go from this perspective, but even to, not only the victims, but the victimizers usually are victims also, and So what that does to an individual, what it does to them in the soul, it's sort of like the mental health. It's sort of like we really wanted to be able to show that and be impactful. Now the song specifically isn't about that, but it's about, hold on, whatever the struggles is,
Right.
and we're gonna make it
Right.
out of this. We're gonna overcome these things. There's so many people. Unfortunately, it's just too many people. But this is what I was going back to, talking about being real, and that video, that song has helped a lot of people. I don't get the calls as much as Amudim do after that, but
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
the amount of impact that it has on people is because you listen, you're saying our story. This is how we feel. This is what we've gone through.
It's
So
real. It's real.
it's real,
Yeah.
right?
We did a
Right.
gig with a local a personality here, Ohio State football coach Ryan Day,
Mm-hmm.
who did something tremendous. Unfortunately, his father committed suicide, and he had this big chip on his shoulder growing up, and trying to fill that void. And he'll be all tough and everything. And then he got into the pro football. Then he went to college football as a coach. And then he started seeing what's going on college campus and high schools and all the suicides. And he's like, you know what? Enough. It's
Right.
enough. I gotta tell my story. And then he and his wife founded the first behavioral health hospital for adolescents. So people learning
Wow.
to turn it for the good, and helping others, with their pain is definitely, it's sort of being like termed as like the flavor of the month. Everyone come out and say their story, but
Yeah.
if it's done, I don't want to, maybe I'll be tired. I don't know what the right, form is, but if it's done with seichel, common sense, if it's done well and constructive, it can help a lot of people. So thank you for your role in all that.
I think that it's important for each person to figure out how to bring out this type of authenticity without, like, I think overly being shocking. But each person has to look at it like, that we all have a mission to bring our thing. You know what I mean? And my thing, especially on this song, was sort of like, oh, what are people gonna think? When I like throw it out. Gotta be real. Gotta be real. And if you think, I told somebody this the other day. This even goes for the last thing we were talking about with the music also. Like, if you can, if Avram Avinu was going around his neighborhood telling everybody that Hashem told me to, like, slaughter my son, you know what I mean? Like, it was out there, and I mean people be like, this guy's crazy. There's no way in the world Hashem told him to do this. It's like, it's Hashem. What are you talking about? Like, can you imagine him going around telling everybody, like, this is my thing, you know what I mean? So he probably wouldn't do it that way, but the whole thing in itself just sounds and looks crazy. But that was for him. That was what Hashem told him to do. So he went in that path, and eventually Hashem worked everything out. But, like, we have to realize that a person to some degree has to be Yachid. If you don't get to a place like Avram Avinu did, where it's you on one side and the rest of the world on the other side, then you're not really serving Hashem. And this is mamish from any of the tzaddikim at any point had to feel like a Yachid. Even Rashbi is saying, if not me, then if it's not me and my son, then it's just I'm the only tzaddik. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. At some point, person goes up. I think the Ramchal talks about more person sins, then you have to, at some point, people start to drop off. There's less and less people, you know what I mean, as a person starts to sin. So this is true for Avodas Hashem, but it's true for every single person's mission in the world, that at some point you have to stand out and be authentic and put the truth out there and be who you are, obviously with some gedarim. But I think it's very, very important for that truth to be out, because it's the only way that the world gets illuminated.
Wow. No, that's such a great way to sum this all up. Let's put Hashem back in the picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was a lot of fun. Nissim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It was great seeing you here in Columbus, and great to follow up like that. You've definitely got a lot of talent and a lot of inspiration, and
Thank you so much.
you know what I mean? It's great to have you, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for your story, and
Thank you so
much
much.
continued success with everything.
Oh man, thank you.
To listen to all Kolot episodes and see upcoming guests, visit kolotpodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in Kolot on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends, and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Kolot is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kolot. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, the Kolot is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kolot, visit thekolel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.